In this video, I'll discuss some of the user settings available within our program and how to add new users. One thing to keep in mind is that to add any new users or to make changes to the users, you have to be a master ID. When you first sign up for the program, you will create a user ID that will, as a default, be a master ID. So if you'd like to make any changes, make sure you log in with a master ID to be able to do so. So start by clicking User Customization in the upper right corner of the screen. Then go to the left menu to the User Setup section and click Register User, and that will take you to the main list screen that's available with all of your users. You'll notice that there's a Set Master ID button at the bottom. This is where you'll be able to add more users. So once you've added in a couple of just general users, you can modify those to master IDs by clicking on the Set Master ID button. Then simply select the user that you'd like to update and make them a master ID. Scroll down and make sure that information is correct. Click Save and then enter in the CAPTCHA. This is case sensitive, so if you don't enter in capitalization or anything like that, it's not going to apply. Then once you're done, click Change, and you're going to receive an email notification that the master ID has been changed. This is simply for security purposes in case it was done without proper authorization. So what I'm now going to discuss are some of the options here available on the left menu and what they do. Group authorization is where you can add in the groups of users that are all going to have the same authorization setting. So one of the nice things about our program is that you can set up your user permissions in terms of what access each user has in the program, and one of the easiest ways to do this is by group. That way you don't have to constantly be modifying each user if everyone is all in the same boat. So to add a new group, go to the bottom of the screen and click New. Then what you're going to do is create a group code and a group name. This doesn't have to be fancy. It can just be the name if that's easiest for you, or it can be numbers. Then go ahead and enter in the name. Make sure it's descriptive enough so you understand what the settings are. And then you're going to set the default authorization for this group. So if you haven't explicitly stated what access they have to a screen, the program will automatically default to yes, they can enter information, they can see it, they can modify and they can delete, or they have no access at all, which means they can't see anything. They can't access any of the data. Then what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down to the bottom of the screen, and this is going to be a layout of all the screens that are available within our program, and then you're going to select what their access level is. So if you'd like to set it to all or none for an entire section, just go ahead and click at the top and that'll be updated. Then if necessary, you can always just modify the individual screens themselves. If you're going to be creating a group and they don't have a lot of access, I'd recommend just setting the default authorization to none, and then just go ahead to only to the sections that they need. So let's say that this is a salesperson type group. Then what you'll do is you'll just scroll down to the inventory module, and the way that this particular program is organized is that at the blue tab here, this is going to be what module you're accessing, and then this is going to be the menu. So if you notice, it says Manage here, and then you have a Time Management menu. So then this will control all of the screens that are available within Time Management. So then these here are the screens. Read Only means that they can only read the information, but they can't enter anything new, they can't make changes to anything, and they definitely can't delete anything. Enter and Read means they can enter new information and they can see existing information, but they can't go back and make changes, nor can they delete anything. All means they have access to all options. They can enter, they can read, they can modify, and they can delete. And then None means that they have zero access, which means they won't even be able to see anything on the screen. It'll simply give them a notification that they don't have authorization for that screen. So then when you're done, just click Save at the bottom of the screen, and this will save the settings for the group. If you ever need to go back and make changes, it's not a problem. Just come back to this group authorization screen here, and you'll be able to make changes to the group. Just simply click on the group code and you'll be able to do it. You can view the users that are part of this group by clicking View on the User tab. The user authorization, this is if you want to search for the authorization settings for a particular user. So if you haven't set it up, or perhaps you want to make changes, you can just click on the magnifying glass, and this will show you all the users that are currently in the program, and you can select which ones you want to modify, then click Apply, and then you can set up the settings. Then click Save when you're done. Copy user settings. This is a convenient capability that we have. So you'll notice that at the top of the page there's a user authorization, EP dashboard settings, my page, and frequently used menus. What I'll discuss are the first three options. So if you have a user that you've already configured all of their settings, so for instance the user of Bob, I've configured Bob and I want to apply all of his user authorization settings to another person, I will simply select those other users in the To column. Now when you're selecting users, you can click on the Shift key and select the users as you normally would. If you are selecting certain users but not all of them, you can click on the the Control key, and that will allow you to select multiple people that aren't next to each other. Then just click Copy at the bottom of the screen to apply the changes. The EP dashboard settings, this is when you first log into the program, what are the fields that the user has authorization to in terms of program data. So for instance, they can see recent sales or inventory data. If you would like them to have access to that, that can be configured here in the EP dashboard settings. My page are the screens that you've granted to them that they have access to, and then also the organization. So if you want to apply the My Page organization to a group of users, you can do so by selecting My Page and then simply select the users. So this makes it convenient if you have a bunch of users that will all have similar settings to each other, but you don't want to do it individually. Then the user login history, this is where you can view which users have logged into the program, when they last accessed it, the total login count, and then how many times they've logged in through the past week, and whether or not they're currently online. So to add a new user, what you're going to do is you're going to go to Register User in the left menu. It's important if you want to do this by group, I would recommend starting with the group authorization, add those groups in, get them set up, and then once you've moved on to actually adding in the new users, then you can apply them at that point. That is my recommendation to make it easiest. So to add a new user, simply click New at the bottom of this Register User screen. The most basic information that you need is you need an ID. So this can be the employer number, it can be their first name, it can be their first initial and last name. It doesn't really matter, just whatever is easiest for your employees to remember. Next, you're going to enter in a password. This is just the default password for this person. They'll be able to log into the program and change it at a later point. This is also where you will reset the password for this particular user in case they've lost their password. Then enter in their full name, and you have to enter in some sort of a phone number and an email address for this particular user. The menu authorization section, this is where you're going to add in the user permissions for this particular user. So you can either do it by individual, select the settings, and then you'll be able to set their user permissions. Or you can do it by group, and then you'll simply select the group that this particular user has access to. If you've selected by individual, you're going to have to set a default authorization setting, so either the all or the none. Then go ahead and click on the Advanced tab. The login history monitoring, this simply tracks the IP addresses that this particular user has logged in through. So if they log in through an IP address that is not commonly used, it'll send the data proprietor of the program an email notification to let you know. So this is in case they're logging in through computers where they shouldn't be. You can keep track of that. If you'd like to use this, simply select Use and the program will alert you. Next is the group where. So when you've added in new users to the program, as a default, they're only for the accounting modules, manage, and the inventory modules. They will have access to my page as well. But the group where is a additional module that they're not a default user. So to opt them in, simply select Use and then select which screens they will have access to. So if you want them to be able to link payment journal information to any of their posts within the groupware module, select those here. Then the menu option. So the menu allows you to set up the screens that they'll have access to in the My page. So this is typically used if this user is only going to have access to a few screens within the program. This will make it easier in terms of their setup. The item, customer, vendor, location, and department level groups, you can control which data they have access to in the program. So for instance, if you're using item level groups to create hierarchical groups to organize your information, or if you have different locations within the program and you only want the user to have access to certain location information, you can set that up here. The confirmation process will set whether or not this particular user can confirm documents within the program. So for instance, in the inventory module, we have the ability to confirm new purchases before they're actually applied to the program, or new sales before they're applied. So this will simply select whether or not this user can confirm documents within the program. It is separated by accounting and inventory module. And then from an accounting perspective, it'll also set a value, a limit to whether or not they can confirm a document. So for instance, if they have a limit to $1,000, if it's $1,500, they won't be able to confirm it. The restricted time is whether or not a user will be able to log into the program during certain hours. So for instance, if you don't want users logging in during nighttime hours, you can block them. The barcode app and quick sales are programs that we've developed that you can grant access to. So if you would like the user to be able to access the barcode app and be able to log in and use it, simply set Use and then you'll be able to configure their settings. The accessible IP, this is slightly different from the previous setting here, the login history monitoring. The accessible IP will actually block a user from logging in unless it's a specified IP address. The ECOUNT notification, this is simply whether or not this user will be able to see notifications from us in terms of maybe maintenance or other things like that. The department, this is simply which department they're a part of in the groupware module. It's helpful in terms of the approval lines that are available. And then the timesheet will set their working time for the day. So for instance, if they're working from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., you can set that information here. And then the program will keep track of when they clock in and out of work to see if they left early or they left late. And then the language is the default language that will be applied to this particular user. The user will always be able to come in and make changes to the language interface if necessary. This is just the default settings. And then click Save at the bottom of the screen to save this user.